Hello, today I would like to talk to you about the implications of the distinctions that you're reading about in the chapter, individualism and collectivism, power distance, and so forth. It's important to get a sense of what these distinctions actually mean when you get into the workplace and how they function in the workplace. Because we can often talk about these types of distinctions in the sense of what we call a kind of an academic understanding, but we need to understand what they actually look like when we put them into practice. So I'll start with actually taking you into a discussion of um, Japanese organizations and working with Japanese organizations. Now, let me stress this, that Japan has gone from more of a collectivist culture to more of an individualist culture over time. However, that doesn't mean that the organizations, Japanese organizations, have changed as dramatically. The Japanese organizations still do function from some of the kind of primary models of a collectivist cultures. So what we think of as Japanese organizations are more like social organizations. And we think of this as lifelong employment. Now, this is an interesting thing, right? Because in America, the understanding is the way to really get ahead is you have to continually change jobs, right? We always, and if you ask people, employment people now, they'll say you'll work for 12 different companies and you'll have like 7 different careers in your lifetime, that people don't stay in the same job, right? And they don't kind of stay even in the same career, that they shift careers over and over again in our culture. Now, and the way you get ahead in our culture is by making that shift, by kind of, being a new hotshot. It's easier to get hired as a younger person now without much of a record as it is to get hired as somebody who has a substantial long-term record in a specific area. So that in Japanese organizations, as it says in the reading, right, seniority is rewarded. That is respected. In our culture, that's not necessarily the case now. They're also within organizations, they have what they community building behaviors. So one is Taiso, and I had Toyota as one of my clients when I was doing account management. And in the Toyota, this was Toyota corporate, so there wasn't a lot of manufacturing going on there, but it was a very large corporate office. And they had a big, almost gymnasium inside, and they would have employees come in and do kind of exercises together, Taiso together, and that would be, and it was part of a bonding. It was part of a kind of a connecting procedure. Also, Japanese organizations have large cafeterias where everyone has meals together. In American companies, we often see people take off and to go these different places. Let's go out to lunch in small groups, or people will go individual, or people will bring their lunch. But at least in this Toyota plant, this Toyota office, they had a large cafeteria and everybody ate meals together, and they cooked the meals there, and everyone ate what was served at the cafeteria in that complex was serving. There's also this notion of being other-oriented. And people negotiate relationships, they don't negotiate contracts, right? And our kind of really strong individualist corporate mindset in America, it's all about the contracts. In Japanese organizations, you really negotiate the relationship. So if you have a good relationship and you negotiate that well, then that can lead to the contracts and so forth. But you don't start with the contracts and then build to the relationships. There's also that they're highly principle oriented. So trust, respect, and patient deliberation is very important. Of course, in American business, we're often contentious. We're often, we talk about it as in going to war, or we talk about beating an opponent, or we talk about, being sharks, right? In the sense that there is a competitive mindset that you're supposed to beat, you're supposed to win a negotiation. in a sense, and beat the other person in contract negotiations. So how do we negotiate with Japanese business people? Well, first of all, it's very important to be prepared for very long negotiations because, again, as you're negotiating relationships, it's not a matter of coming in, hammering something out, and leaving. You have to build the relationship, and it takes time to build a relationship. It's also important to communicate with top decision makers. What happens often with Japanese businesses is that you will be talking with somebody and believe that that person has the opportunity, the credibility to be able to, that they are positioned in a place to be able to make decisions. But because those organizations are so hierarchical, that and there's so much power distance involved in those organizations that in fact you could be talking to somebody and that person does not have the power or the authority to be able to make a decision. But that's the first person they sent to you, and oftentimes what that person is that person is just to get a sense of, are you somebody they can work with without that person being able to have the power to make the decision. It's very important to suspend our assumptions and expectations about how we function in business, right? So if you're used to an American model, you have to suspend the assumptions based on an American model and the expectations based on an American model. We're going to come in, we're going to hammer this deal out, we're going to get it done, it's going to be quick, it's going to be effective, all of those types of the basic assumptions of operating within the U.S. Or Western, right, Euro-American or Eurocentric position and perspective on business needs to go away. Focus on them rather than yourself. Of course, in America, right, we're all about telling people what we can do for them. We're all about making a pitch. We're all about telling them how we're great and we're better than the competition and so forth. And we sell ourselves, right? We're asked to sell ourselves. In fact, on job interviews, I'm often just asked questions, and then I'm supposed to answer in a way that I sell myself to those people. In the Japanese model, the focus is more on the other than on yourself. So as I said, instead of telling them what you're going to do for them, let them discover what you want, right? In the sense of let a sense of discovery come together. So let them discover what you want, but also, instead of asking them directly, what do you want, having the discussion to allow these ideas coming into play. So what's perception and reality? Well, these are certain perceptions with regards to Japanese. So one perception is Japanese are shy, right? And we can talk about that from the sense of the reading today, right? In the sense that high context cultures are comfortable with silence. Our individualist culture is not comfortable with silence. Silence freaks us out. But there's silence in high context cultures is actually just fine, and people are comfortable with silence. Japanese don't pay attention during class or presentations, right? And we'll say that for Japanese culture, it's customary to close one's eyes when concentrating. It's actually a very normal thing to close your eyes through the process of contemplation. Japanese say yes when they mean no, and they don't say what they mean, right? In the sense that, right, in Japanese culture, because the mindset is the importance is so much based on relationships that in fact, there's a lot of face work being done, a lot of face saving being done. So you may, to save face, you may agree with, they may agree with you only on principle, but not in reality, in the sense of you're not making an agreement for the contract, but they agree with you only on principle. There's another perception of it takes Japanese forever to do things, right? So often, and I said before, often decisions require consultation with others. You often will be talking with somebody who does not have the actual authority to make a choice and a decision right there. And we can even think that that wouldn't want to be, that actually wouldn't be advantageous for the culture, because if the culture is a collectivist culture, decisions should be collective decisions. They will not look you in the eye. This is actually a sign of deference. It's a sign of respect in Japan, not to look somebody directly in the eye, to avert eye contact, especially when you have differences of people, power differences. And then this other statement, they are not straightforward enough. Burden of understanding rests with the speaker and listener. The listener needs to get the hint, right? Sometimes the speaker might not say something very bluntly or very straightforward, but in fact, the listener needs to be attentive to all of the different messages that are going on there so that they are able to pay attention to those messages and to be able to get the hint of what those messages are saying. So it's important that when we are in these processes and we're working with people from other cultures, that we do understand those cultures. We understand how, in fact, they can end up making it very difficult for our culture, for people from our culture, to be able to engage them in a way if we can't get beyond our own expectations and our own ethnocentric perspective. So we talked about this. We're going to talk a little bit about doing business in the Middle East in a lecture later this week. Thanks. Have a great day.